All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for participating in this film screening and for joining us now in the panel discussion. We're really pleased to have two community members with us here who are going to answer some questions. We're going to be in conversation about the film and their perspectives on some of the themes that the film raised. My name is Sharon Brisolera, and I'm happy to be a partner with KIXC in this venture.
Oh, no, what's going on?
And I'm going to let our
That was totally
guests
unprofessional,
introduce
but
themselves.
cute.
And Ken, I think you're not muted. So maybe we can start. Rob, would you like to start? Introduce yourself and
Sure. My name is Rob Rose. I'm co-founder of the Rose Center for Rehabilitation, Hope and Wellness, and work there. We've been there for almost 18 years now. And I've been a quadriplegic for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in January 2003.
thank you. Haley?
Yes, hi. Thank you all for joining and for inviting me. My name is Haley, and I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis when I was 3 years old, and I'm now 51. So I've had it for quite a while and started using a wheelchair when I was a child. Yeah, and I live in Redding. I grew up in Southern California. And let me know if there's anything else you want to know. Oh, I do work for 211 NorCal. I've been with them since 2011. So, thanks.
Thanks. And as we, go along, if there are other things that, you want to share, that's great. And we thought we'd begin, and whoever wants to go first can go with just your general impressions of the movie, of the film. Was there anything that surprised you, anything that stood out to you in particular?
Well, I'm having problems with my computer, Sharon. I'm getting the feedback on it. I don't know how I get rid of that or
I I think if you close the other window where the film is, if you had that open, just close that. I was having the same issue.
I don't know how do you close that, Haley?
Oh, on mine it was on a separate window.
Oh,
And if you could see the chat, Ken might be able to help you with that as well. Ken, if you're on. And one thing that we might do is if you wanted to mute while Ken um, helps you and see if that helps for part of it. And Haley, we could start with you and
Sure.
circle.
Yeah, so what a powerful film. Beautiful dancer. Um, what surprised me? I think I think it's interesting how, of course, people generalize people with disabilities, but there's all kinds of disabilities and there are all kinds of abilities. Um, and so that kind of strikes me. I was Something that she said I know in your question you said something that might not resonate with me. Something that kind of struck me is when she said it might have been easier not having a memory of the life I miss and and the life that I want. And and that's a tricky. I've had this conversation before with a friend with quadriplegia who was in a car accident in her 20s. Is it harder, having a disability all of a sudden, as opposed to growing up with it, where I was able to adapt to it from a young age? But I think it's important for people to be aware that even though I didn't have a life I mean, I don't have memories of a life with abilities, physical abilities, and but I still fantasized about it. So it was still difficult. I still grieved not having that life as a child. So that was it's kind of an interesting point to make, but of course it's going to be difficult either way.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, so that part of, is it better to have loved and lost, kind of known or not?
Right, right.
But you're speaking to that what we want, what we see around us, and what we can imagine having.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. I know my friend, the same friend, she has mentioned she still would dream when she falls asleep and dreams that she's not using a wheelchair a lot of the time. And in my dreams, I'm still stuck in this physical condition. So I think that's kind of interesting. And I'm actually kind of interested. How do I change my dreams? My night dreams. I want to work on that.
Yeah, like that lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, and I know Rob probably went off to be able to reset, some things, but I wondered about when you talk about your friend, and in the film, it's a case of someone who had an accident that she walked into, in a sense, I think she used some language about like she caused it, she did that. And I wonder what you find in talking to other people about um, differences that might exist between, you're alluding to some of that kind of desire or thinking too, but the difference between something that happened as an accident, which can bring a certain kinds of feelings or thoughts, and something that you're born with.
Yeah. Either born with or it came at a young age.
Mhm.
Yeah, that kind of struck me, her father expressing his anger to her. And I thought, wow. Um, yeah, but I think our parents all go through that grief. And my dad, I remember him trying to move my legs as a young child, just move your knees, and he just wanted me to be fixed so badly. And um, I, and on the same token, my mom always thought I would be healed. She was a Christian Scientist and, um, had strong faith. And I thought I would be healed because she believed I would be healed. And so then when I wasn't healed, I felt like, gosh, what am I doing wrong? And um, there's kind of a sense um, of you're broken, there's something not right about you. And well, that's how I was feeling. There was also, I think in Christian Science, there's definition for inflammation and anger. And so maybe I was angry. And so I explored that. How might I have caused it with my anger? And, as a young baby or toddler, or anyway, I had to come to grips with that. I mean, I didn't have to, but I did as a young adult finally. And um, kind of explored, I kind of had a bit of spiritual growth where I came to a sense of acceptance. And for me, I believe that we're all here for a reason. And, I think we all want to find meaning in anything seemingly negative that happens. So I kind of brought my own meaning to it that was more positive.
Mm, mm. And it sounds like you're saying you got to a place of distinction between, it's not that I'm doing something wrong, that I caused this, but I am finding meaning in my experience and how I want to live that. Is that
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I've had throughout my life, I've had people come up to me and want to pray for me and, you know, thinking healing, healing. And I used to oblige. And as I got older, I realized I don't have to, you know, oblige. I can kindly decline. I appreciate their intentions, but it's just not happening at this point. So,
yeah. Oh, I think this is Rob, coming back. And you don't have to, but I wonder if there's anything else that you would want people to understand about a gesture that's like that, that might be coming from a good place, but what it's like to be on the other.
yeah, I think just awareness. We all lack awareness in different areas, and that might be one area where somebody can become more aware. Often I think people think they're the first person to approach me, you know, to ask to pray. And it's like, how many? 100 in my lifetime.
Mhm.
So it's just awareness.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Rob, good to see you back.
Thanks. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. So I'll ask you the questions I was asking Haley. The first one is really about, what surprised you or, kind of struck you about the film. Um, that, it could be something very similar to your experience or something that was different.
I mean, some of the similarities were the same with my experience. I mean, I spent 6.5 months in a hospital though,
Mm,
and my rehab was quite extensive. The movie didn't get enough into her rehab and everything. So I'm curious to see what the full length movie is going to show and how in depth they get into that. But I know a lot of I mean, I'm a little more higher functioning than Kelsey was. So I can relate to some of the struggles that she experiences on a daily basis as well.
Yeah, and Haley and I were talking a bit also about friends that she has and some of the difference that there can be when something occurred as the result of an accident and when you're either born into or it occurs later in life. And I'm wondering if you have any observations about that.
I mean, all my friends were pretty supportive, and they helped me through my whole process, and they always stuck by me and were willing to do anything they could to help out. So, I mean, it's yeah, it was. I mean, it was great.
Oh. And our next question, you've spoken about some of the things, in the film. Was there any experience or something that was shared that really resonated with you, that you felt like, that is something that either I is my experience or I feel is important for people to understand, or that I try to communicate, anything like that that you saw or that was said that resonated strongly.
I think just the difficulty that she had in doing things, and just the frustration. I mean, a lot of it, my hands are a lot like hers, so I don't have a lot of function with them, and there's a lot of frustration that comes with that, and I could see that in her as well, and the ability just to move.
Hmm.
I agree. um, you know, just getting ready in the morning, you feel like you're climbing Mount Everest. um, it's like a huge task at times for simple everyday tasks.
Mhm.
And it can be frustrating at times. But I do have a helper, and it can be frustrating though, relying on people for help. So, and especially when they don't show up. which
Yeah.
I've had a lot of that experience. I currently have a very reliable helper, so I appreciate that very much. But in the past, I've had really bad situations with people not showing up or just different things happening.
So
Frustrating.
not showing up, not calling, not finding a
Yeah,
substitute, just not coming.
right.
And I've been very fortunate in that way that I'm on the other end. I've had caregivers that have been really good, and I've really lucked out with as far as that goes. But yeah, with I mean, they have some issues too, but for the most part, it's been pretty good.
Mhm. The description of the film, and they talk about ableism, and that the kind of blinders that many people have, that look at the world in a way that expects everyone to be able to move through the world the same way they do. Were there aspects of ableism that you have experienced or observed, that didn't come up quite as much in the movie? Things that are common experiences for people.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is traveling and finding accessible hotel rooms, and then getting to the hotel room and they say it's accessible and you can use it, and then getting to the room and discovering that I can't get into the shower because there's a 4-inch dam there in the way, or just I guess the hotel staff not really understanding or what the needs are.
Mm,
Yeah, traveling can be very frustrating, and talking to hotel representatives asking, is it a roll-in shower? Is it a tub, a bench? Because
Mhm.
sometimes they'll just say it's an accessible room. And so figuring out all the details, I think having to plan and ask questions can get quite frustrating at times.
mhm,
Um, but on a positive note, I appreciate all the strides that have been made in the past decades. And for instance, I went to college at Humboldt State University in the 90s, the early 90s, and like sidewalks, didn't have ramps on corners. And the first dorm room, when I got to the college, I realized that the bathroom in the dorm had a step up to where the showers were. And so I ended up having to get moved, even though I explained before that I used a wheelchair. But a lot of things I think are changing for the better. I know in Arcata, they've, I think, redone all the sidewalks and everything since then. And I just appreciate living in this country where we have rules in place and people are trying to make things better. So in other countries, I want to travel to Italy someday, and I'm concerned about accessibility there from what I've heard and read, and even people there living in apartments and not being able to come down the stairs unless somebody carries them. Um, I've read about things like that. I think I'm getting off the topic, but
Yeah,
no,
I definitely agree with you, Haley.
yeah, no, I mean, it's related. You're talking about progress that's been made. I mean, and you're both talking too about the difference between kind of following the letter of the law, like I'm checking the box, I've got the ADA accessible something, something, but not really understanding what it means, not really ensuring necessarily that it's completely accessible.
Right.
Right.
And I was excited in San Francisco recently to find out they have a Ferris wheel that is accessible for wheelchair users. So like, wow, that is so exciting. So yeah, my partner and I definitely had to go on that. But yeah, even for recreational activities, I think it's awesome when people come up with ideas for how to include people with limited abilities.
And what's your kind of, I have two follow-up questions for that, but I've seen lots of different documentaries and and when I teach sociology, we often talk about, social change and social movements. What has been your sense of what had to happen to make some of those changes be taken seriously? And it sounds like you both still have to advocate for yourselves a lot and ask the questions and, what does accessible mean and explaining things, to clerks and whatnot. What does it take to um, make that kind of change happen when it comes to more inclusion and accessibility?
I think it's just more public awareness and making people more aware of that there's individuals in wheelchairs that have needs too, and things need to be made accessible for them. I mean, for a long time, sidewalks, you had to go a bump, jump up over a curb before they started making those accessible. And I went to New York City a few months, or actually a few years after I got injured, and trying to navigate the streets in New York City was pretty much of a nightmare. But I'm sure that now they've improved, in my hope. But at that time, it was a matter of being popped down a curb and then popped up a curb and needing assistance. It's not something that I could do independently. Whereas a lot of the places I can go independently and can go right up this sidewalk. And I mean, there's still a lot of buildings that they don't have accessible doors. So you have to wait for someone to open the door for you, or you have to try to struggle to get it open.
Yes, door opening is definitely an issue. And I know some people are hesitant to offer help because they don't want to offend me. But I'm happy to have them help open the door. It's a struggle for me.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and part of what you're bringing up, and this is often true when it comes to kind of inclusion and diversity and equity, is people, once they recognize their privilege or biases that they've had, sometimes can feel uncomfortable. What do I do now? Like, I don't know what to do. And there's some of that around language use. And in the film, Gabe talked about wanting to use the word cripple to reclaim that in his, in their production. And there are other disability rights advocates who use different language, person living with, or, there's I'm not going to remember her name now, but she's a singer, songwriter who decidedly describes herself as disabled. And so I'm wondering for you both, um, the what language means to you for your own identification, and what you appreciate about interacting with people, how you navigate that discomfort.
Yeah, of course, the term crippled really bothers me, and handicap, those are like nails on a chalkboard to me. But I think people just can be unaware, and I try not to get frustrated or show frustration, but just try to help people be more aware. I prefer this term. Sometimes people ask me too, which is cool.
So
But
you don't
I think
people ask you.
diff ability, like different ability appeals to me, diff ability.
Mhm.
Um, and what else? Oh, I guess physically challenged is okay for me too. But we all have our preferences, and I try not to get too caught up in terms at times, but I think it's good. We're on a good track. We're on the right track to educating people.
Mhm. And it sounds like you're also saying, and then when I hear from you, Rob, that you appreciate when people ask you.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
And yeah, it's always nice to have somebody say that and ask if you need help.
Hmm.
But then a lot of times, like Haley was saying, is with the disability, I think a lot of people say, oh, refer to the guy in the wheelchair. That's a popular one.
And
Right.
a popular one that it sounds like you're not a fan of.
I mean, I'm fine. I'm not, I don't get angry with it or what, but I mean, that's a lot of way they associate that with me with, of course, being in a wheelchair and associate with me being that way. And no, I don't get offended by it, but I like to think of me as more just having some limitations. I'm just disabled, yes, but just more limited to being able to do stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying in the film too, and so much more.
Yeah.
But and people, I think the point about asking, um, you find when it comes to asking about pronouns that, people, um, even your age didn't grow up as, practicing, but being able to step past your discomfort to ask what people would like to be called, just like we do that with names, right?
Mhm.
Is there anything that you share with people or tell with people, tell to people about that you find resonates with them?
Um, not really, not off the top of my head that I can think of.
Same here. I can't think of.
Okay. Um, that each, and I've read some, different reviews on the film, and, the director, and I think Kelsey also co-directed, the film. So directors bring a particular perspective to any, work of art. So I'm wondering if you were directing a similar film, it wouldn't have to be about Kelsey. It could be,
Yeah.
about yourself or someone that you know. What would be the story that you would want to tell? What would be important about that, about your story?
Mhm. Mhm.
Are you going first,
Go,
Rob?
go, go ahead.
Okay.
And who would
Um,
star in it? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I have actually thought about writing a book based on some life experiences, and I wish, a film could be made about some of these universal experiences that I'm guessing are universal. People using a wheelchair, um, and yeah, the topic of sexuality, of course, and um, just um, just depicting how we have similar dreams and desires as everybody else. So we and we might strive to make them happen. So yeah, I think some of my experiences around dating are pretty humorous, and even playing, sexually, and just there's some interesting experiences there, and then around relationships and becoming foster parents, my ex and I deciding not to have my own children, my own babies, but making that decision and not, yeah, I guess. And one thing I want to point out too, I appreciated a gynecologist I had back then who said, "Why don't you have a baby?" And before she said that, I always thought, oh, it's just going to be a burden to society if I have a baby, and to my partner, it would be on my partner to take care of the baby. And I mean, as far as most of the physical care. And anyway, just having that doctor suggest it meant so much to me, because I think a lot of people would say, oh no, she shouldn't have children, her children.
Mm, mm. So just kind of recognizing, opening the possibilities that you weren't seeing at the time.
Right. And I think different things like, riding a bus to work, and some lady I was sitting next to said, "You're beautiful." And I never had anybody tell me that I was beautiful before. And it kind of strikes me how you never know how much impact you can have on a person just
Mhm.
saying something positive to them.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, I think for me, I'd be interested in a movie of a day in the life of a quadriplegic, where they could see what goes on from the time you get up through the time you go to bed, and just the struggles that you go through to get through the day, or just the challenges that you face. I mean, for me, it's people are amazed that they always say, "Will you drive?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I drive." And they just, it's so, for people, it's hard to comprehend that you're in a wheelchair, your hands don't really function, and you still have the ability to drive. So some people I'll actually take out and show them my accessible van and the controls and everything, and they're just amazed. So it'd be interesting for people to see that, what goes on in a day, and not just some of the struggles, but also um, some of the good things that happen throughout it.
Mm. And when you've had people who you've shown the van, or for both of you had those other conversations, um, it's kind of the opposite of that gynecologist is sort of opening things up, for you, like this is possible. Um, what has been helpful about having other people get a sense of an appreciation? What has struck them about what it's like to go through a day as
Well, I
you're
think some people, it changes their perspective, because they see someone in a wheelchair and they think, well, they can't do anything, or they can't do very much, and then they see how much you can actually do, and that your function, and then they're, I mean, some people are completely changed, which is neat to have
Mm,
a whole different perspective on someone that's in a wheelchair.
I agree.
yeah, and that's kind of like Brian Stevenson, who he's talking more about like in the criminal legal system, but he has this term called getting proximate, and how much we learn about life and ourselves when we get close and listen and pay attention. And
Mm.
And I also want to point out that, just because a person has a disability doesn't mean they're aware of all disabilities. And like for me, I'm not around somebody with low vision, or someone who's not able to see. And so I don't know what terms, they would prefer, or, you know, it's it's about awareness for all of us. And I think just having grace with people and not judging.
hmm
Mm. Definitely.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, is how that cuts across, expecting one veteran to speak for the experiences of all veterans, for example, or, people of a particular race. And it's very similar. You can know my experience, and hopefully that, will
Mhm.
some awareness. One question that I had, a big part of the film, she was kind of thinking about being part of this trial. And, I've read in the past some, civil rights advocates who've talked about wanting to distance themselves from those types of things, and saying, for example, this one person who's speaking said, "Look, when I go down a mountain, I have to go down kind of on my butt and my hands." um, I see different things than you. You know, I experience that, and I don't want to be compared to what my experience would be like if I were walking. I have a different experience, and I value my perspective. And so I'm wondering your views on that conversation about the trial and you know, the medical trial and kind of conversations around that.
When I was in my early 20s, I went in for evaluation to see if I could have joint replacements. For a long time, they talked about doing joint replacements when I was younger, but they're waiting for my body to grow as much as it was going to grow. And then, but my arthritis was more severe than other people, other children who got arthritis. Mine was more severe. Anyway, I went in my 20s, early 20s. I took a semester off from college to go in for an evaluation. So I was actually pretty hopeful about maybe having some more movement, and then they decided no, I had adapted my body. They were hesitant because of all the risks, and I am able to use crutches somewhat, even though my knees are permanently bent. They're fused bent. But if they replaced the knees, like I might not be able to use crutches, or anyway, they determined it wasn't for me. But I can understand having that hope, and then accept, you know, coming to an acceptance that it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
I mean, for me, I weigh out the pros and the cons. It could either make you better, you could stay the same, or it could make you worse. And I'm not willing to take the chance at the moment to go through that, and the fear that it might make things worse and I might lose some of the functions that I currently have. So I'd have to wait for them to do a lot more research on
Mm.
it, have a lot more positive data showing that it's improved things. Because
Mhm.
work, I've seen cases where it's made individuals worse than it's helped them. So
Mhm. Yeah, and it sounds like your point about it could stay the same, but you're going through so much for it
right.
to stay the same.
Mhm.
Mhm. And Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your business and what you do?
It's a physical therapy clinic in Reading that we see everything from ankle sprains to spinal cord injuries, and it all came about as a result of my accident. And my wife and I wanted to create a facility that gave people the hope. And the hospital that I was in, the doctors, some of the doctors didn't give patients very much hope after them leaving the hospital, and just told them to go on, go back home. This is as good as it's going to get, and
Mm.
just learn, deal with it. And so we created the Rose Center. And as soon as you walk into the gym, the first thing you see in big letters is the word hope. So we always want to give people hope, no matter what anybody else has said, that they're always going to have hope when they come to the Rose Center. And it's a 10,000 square foot facility with a 5,000 square foot gym that's completely wheelchair accessible. And we've been, it'll be 18 years next March, or this coming March.
Wow. And
But
what are some of the changes, whether it's, you know, emotional, social, physical, that that you see?
I mean, it's as far as with me being there and other individuals that come in that are freshly paralyzed, at least I can give them an insight and tell them where my experience and where I was and where I am now. Try to encourage them and give them hope, as well as everyone else that comes in the facility. Individuals, like I said, someone could have a sprained ankle and then they're sitting next to someone that's had a stroke, or they see someone that's been paralyzed. And I think they can look at them and realize, well, if they can do it, I can do it. They see someone really struggling to get up and walk or do an exercise, and everyone kinds of feeds off each other and encourages one another.
Mm-hmm. And Haley, I know you mentioned that you work for 211, and that's such an important resource in terms of connecting and referring people. And I imagine you get all kinds of requests. Did you want to say anything about that, about what it's like to work in that field?
Sure. I don't work in the call center. I'm the database manager, so I'm in charge of the information in the database, and have a wonderful colleague who works with me. And it's it's an interesting role. We get all kinds, 211 does get all kinds of requests. For those who aren't aware, Shasta County and Tehama and Siskiyou in this local area, you can dial 211 any time of day, and the call specialist will walk you through to find out what your needs are. And we list resources for all kinds of basic needs like food, clothing, housing, and also mental health resources, transportation resources, legal resources for veterans, seniors, people with disabilities, and much more. And we have a website, 211norcal.org.
Yeah, and I know you reach out to a lot of organizations to make sure they're represented.
Yes, and we are currently going through and making sure we have all the accessibility information about agency sites in place, for whether there are stairs or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both for watching the film, with us, and for being in conversation. And as we wrap up, was there anything else that you wanted to share that you feel like is important for people to know, or anything else on your mind or heart right now? Rob's like, you asked a lot of questions.
Yeah. I encourage people not to be afraid to come up and talk to someone with a disability. Or, people are always kind of afraid or hesitant to ask me what happened to me, but I'm more than willing to share with them and, try to maybe enlighten them on what it's like to be disabled, or if they have questions in regards to that. But I'm curious to see the whole movie.
Me too. It's a beautiful film, and I hope to see more like that, or others on other topics coming out. There's such a lack of representation, in general TV and movies, and I'm hoping more comes out. I just wanted to add one more thing. A movie I saw as a youngster, maybe I was 12 or 13, and I was just like, wow, this woman is dating, this woman using a wheelchair is dating a man, actually going on a date, and they're in bed together, and but that was like the only thing I saw. It was like a rerun back from the 70s, but anyway, I think it's The Other Side of the Mountain. I'm not sure, but anyway, I hope to see more in film. So
Yeah, well,
I think it's important. I think it's important for anyone to see.
There is one movie, Sharon, that I don't know if it's Me Before You, that kind of depicts quadriplegic life and the struggles that he goes through and all that. So people that haven't seen it may want to watch that one.
Yeah, and I'll post, I'll make sure with KXC that we'll post when the full film is out. It was posted on the Eventbrite. I don't remember it exactly. And some of those other films and the artists that I was talking about, she's got some incredible music out there. So check that out on probably their Facebook site. And we'll post some of those other movie names. So thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you at the next pop-up.